Just as by way of intro, to Kona Group, so we're a collection of companies centered on multi-decade, long-sighted small business excellence is what we call it. We're self-funded, so it's sometimes described our holding company as like a boutique holding company or a lifestyle holding company. We have quite the diverse portfolio that I'll speak to as we get into talking about growth today. We have Taylor Cooperative. Got to see a lot of you come over. Thank you for spending time with us in the shop if you did. We acquired a fine art studio that teaches art classes and ceramics program back in 2021. And we made the very natural progression from fine suiting and fine art into general contracting, bought a construction company. It's a very common ETA to have. We're a builder of custom homes. We're one of Utah's leading builders of ADUs, accessory dwelling units, so micro housing. And the thinking there was we loved the idea of running a builder due to naivety primarily. And the thinking was also proximity to trades companies, and we acquired their largest subcontractor, Northern Electric, back in 2021 as well. Talking about Dakota's model, sometimes it's hard to describe because we're not the traditional holding company that is acquiring established businesses, throwing on a bunch of debt, driving a little bit of growth, and just holding on while we pay down debt and create equity value. I spent the beginning of my career, like I said, in the 0 to 1 space, and typically ETA is focused on the 1 to 10 space. I kind of think we acquire like the 0.75 space. We look for companies that are absolutely ready to sell. They have product market fit. There's something of interest in it that we have in this business. They have an owner ready to retire. And second, we look for companies that can be, or companies where we can be a good owner, where we're uniquely positioned to help bring this company into its second chapter. And then finally, we look for unrealized opportunity. And that's kind of our biggest driver of what's driven our acquisition criteria to date. We almost look for companies where the seller's trash is kind of our treasure, so to speak, or maybe what a searcher might turn down, but we feel like we have unique either capability or capital or kind of vision to take a company into a bold second chapter. So driving growth is pretty integral to our business model. Dakota companies have grown an average of 65% in our first year of ownership, and that's been really good to us as a holding company. So we've been primarily growing through driving organic growth. Obviously, we've made inorganic growth through acquisitions, but once we own the company, we really focus on driving growth. And so that's what I was asked to speak on today. It's a very broad topic. And so my thinking for the format today is I want to fly at like a 50,000 foot level, cover a lot of topics quickly, and then open it up for Q&A and see where the conversation takes us from there. But before I get into our playbook on growth and stories from driving growth inside of our portfolio, I want to talk about whether to grow, how to think about growth specifically in ETA context. First and foremost, we've learned, and I've experienced this all throughout my career, that it can be very challenging to serve both masters of EBITDA, earnings, and revenue growth. In order to drive revenue growth, you have to break a lot of things. You have to be innovating. You have to be experimenting. And in order to drive earnings, you have to have stability. You need to be optimized and driving process efficiency. And sometimes they're at odds with one another. And so especially in ETA where there's a J curve, and that's not just on financials. There's a J curve on you learning the business, on being able to operate well, being able to run it efficiently. Typically, there's multiple phases before it might make sense to even think about growth. We found that the first chapter is really just learning the business, and then the second is trying to figure out how to run it about as well as the seller did. And then third is kind of entering phase 3 of being able to operate it in new and better ways. I've seen some searchers where each phase takes 1 or 2 years. I've seen some searchers where they're able to get into growth at the tail end of the first year. And again, your mileage may vary on that one. I also hear a lot in search, maybe you don't really need to focus on growth. Go buy an established, durable business that has strong earnings. Again, throw some debt on it and just try not to screw it up. Just white knuckle it for 10 years and pay down that debt and create equity value that way. And my typical pushback on that is, well, that might be the appropriate strategy based on how you're financing it and kind of the general plan that you have. I think that learning how to drive growth is essential because sometimes you can lose a key client, get competitive pressure suddenly over the course of your ownership. Salespeople leave your organization, marketing evolves, and whole channels stop working. You have to keep up with inflation, which has been quite the thing over the past few years, macro events that you can't control. So even if your strategy may not be fully aligned with the way we think about ETA and growth and our holding company model, knowing how to grow is a pretty essential thing as you start your journey as an owner-operator. All right, so let's get into how to grow. I decided to distill it down into 10 principles, 10 things that we've found to be true in our experience that matter a lot when it comes to knowing how to grow your company. And like I said, I'll rapid fire through this stuff. Feel free to interrupt as I'm going, but I plan to spend a lot of time with questions at the end. And the first is kind of pre-growth. In order to drive growth, we've seen that you need to get very clear on the exact pain point that you're solving. And we've seen that there's companies or lines of business within your company that are providing a vitamin solution to a problem. It's a nice to have. You don't need it to get throughout your day, but augments your day-to-day. And we've seen some companies or lines of business that are true painkillers. You're solving a very acute pain point for the customer. The greater the pain, the greater the opportunity for you to align your value proposition to that pain point. And sometimes it's not what you think it is. And oftentimes it's more than just one pain point. One of the things we do post-acquisition is we sit down and we document buyer personas. And oftentimes there's a handful, 2 to 5 different personas. What good looks like here is you have very discrete personas that you're selling into and building an understanding of what they truly care about and how they make their decision on selecting your company, whether it's a service or a product. And if you don't know it or you don't have 100% confidence in your value proposition, customer interviews can be really powerful. We jump on phones in the early days, we try to talk to customers, we really get to know why do customers hire us and why us versus a competitor. If I talk about Northern Electric, our electrical contractor, we have at least 3 very different buyer personas. As an electrical contractor, we provide a lot of EV chargers to EV dealerships. And what they care most about, we learned, is not safety necessarily, not necessarily the price point. They want someone who's fast to dispatch, and at a dealership, they want their sales guy to be able to sell a customer an EV, even if they don't have a charger at home, and promise them that they can get us out within 24 to 48 hours. That's their number one pain point, which is very different from homeowners who have a problem with their electrical wiring at home, right? They care about excellent reviews, and if their power's out, they want you to come quick. You need to be highly responsive. General contractors, they care about thorough estimates, want you to be cheap. And so if you're servicing multiple different lines of business, you need to really understand what that pain point is and speak to each buyer persona in their language. An example we use from time to time is if you think about Mint, the now retired Intuit product, you could accurately describe their value proposition as use our app to track all your financial data in one place. That's what they do. But if you're trying to align it to the real pain point that Mint is solving this application, perhaps this is the better value proposition. Right, so it's critical to really speak in your buyer's language and address their pain points and do that consistently across all of your touch points, from your website to your interactions with customers over the phone. Your sales team should be exceptional at understanding buyer personas and knowing how to interact with customers, and so on and so forth. So that's principle 1. Get clear on the pain point that you are solving. Principle 2 is identify where your customers are most likely to be found. If you're not sure, once again, spend some time on the front lines. This is something that is critical to figure out if you're trying to find a way to begin driving demand. Ask your customers, this may seem obvious, how they heard about you, how they made a decision, and what mattered to them in that decision. Also ask your team. Your team on the ground is usually the best source for this. What are their main questions and objections of the sales process? And again, don't hesitate as the owner to jump in, especially early on post-acquisition. For our custom home builder, Built by Design, we had a theory on who our customers were and where they spent their time, trying to figure out how we could go drive growth and get out in front of them. The buyer persona we came up with were Jeff and Jane, a highly affluent, this is for ADUs, homeowners wanting to add additional rental income. So they had a lot size big enough and an interest to go build a structure behind a structure, a mother-in-law unit, and not knowing where to start, they needed help buying an ADU. That was the thesis. What we found is we were wrong. Actually, the best way to find Jeff and Jane is not directly to them, but actually pursuing a demand funnel with architects and design firms. And so our go-to-market motion, our sales funnel begins actually by selling into architects. So just an example where it might not be exactly where you think it is and how essential it is to know where your prospects spend their time. Might be digital marketing, maybe old-fashioned direct mail and door hangers. Could be a sales motion, outbound sales, going up, drumming up leads, outbound pipeline, attending trade shows. Sometimes I hear a business owner say, well, actually, I don't need to grow. In fact, that's a great thing. Like, that's why I bought this business. We have an excellent reputation. We don't need to invest in sales and marketing. And of course, we have to remember that knowing how to grow is essential based on what comes and punches you in the mouth. But also, if you have a solid organic track record, you're actually really well positioned to perform well in either paid marketing or an outbound sales motion. And we think it's essential to know how to grow in order to get in control of your business. So that was the last principle, know where to find your prospective customers. Principle 3, evaluate whether your growth is going to be more sales-led or marketing-led. Some of this is industry by industry, company by company. In general, a sales-led organization is an organization that has a higher average sale price. You're selling something of a higher ticket item with a much longer sales cycle where the prospect needs a consultative hand-holding process to make a decision. Whereas marketing is typically the opposite, right? It's more of an impulsive decision, smaller ticket price, and a shorter sales cycle. We talked about Taylor Cooperative, our custom clothier. The way we drive demand is spending an ungodly sum of money across different digital marketing platforms. That's where prospects make their decision. They're searching, looking at Google reviews, comparing one clothier to the next. And our job is to drive traffic to our website, convert that traffic to a scheduled fitting. And the sales motion is very inbound led. Our sales team really are kept fed 100% of the time from our marketing organization. Built by Design, on the other hand, our general contractor, it's quite the opposite. We have an outbound sales team. Their job is to go drum up pipeline. They're attending trade shows. They're networking with architects. We're sending outbound email, placing cold calls, doing lunches with architects, and we're managing a more professionalized deal progression process. We're taking deals through stages, converting leads to deals, and trying to bring them to a fully closed won position and bring them in as a customer. Oftentimes, though, it's best when they work hand in hand, right? Typically, marketing is driving awareness and interest, helping generate unqualified leads, and your sales team is helping qualify those leads, progressing them to close. So that's principle 3, evaluate how you grow. Is it more of a marketing-led motion or a sales-led motion? Principle 4 is document and track every step of your funnel. You may hear terms like tofu, mofu, and bofu, obnoxious terms that are acronyms for top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. Top of funnel is essentially how you drive demand, how you get people thinking about your industry, your product, considering you. Mid funnel is the attempt to convince them to do business with you, and bottom of funnel is figuring out how to get it to close one. We sit down and laboriously sit down and map out our sales process. It's an important thing to do post-acquisition. Look at it from a bird's eye view and see what steps are occurring from the moment they express interest to the moment they close. What different paths can you send them on? And importantly, know your conversion rate overall and where your various drop-off points are. We think of our funnel as a bucket, and every bucket has a leak somewhere where some water is escaping. And the job of driving growth, the head of sales and marketing, is to go patch where the water is leaking, and water's going to start leaking out of another place in the bucket. You're going to patch it. It's this constant process of optimizing your conversion funnel. I have 2 stories, but to leave time, maybe I'll tell one story from Built by Design. We found as we mapped out our sales process that a significant drop-off point was if a prospect comes to us interested in building a custom home or an ADU, the first step in the process is to go draft plans with an architect engineer. And we would send them to an architect engineer and hope that in that 8 to 12 week process, they circle back around with us. And due to being busy, we didn't monitor that very well. Once we realized that was a major drop-off point, we implemented weekly calls with our architectural partners to review all the leads we've been sending them, talk weekly about strategy, where the client's at, and how we can work together to bring this customer across the finish line. So oftentimes the solutions in fixing the leaks in your funnel are actually quite obvious, but a lot of people just don't sit down and look at it from that bird's eye view and try to find ways they can tinker with it to improve. So that's principle 4, document and track your funnel. Principle 5 is you got to invest to grow. You got to spend money to make money, as they say. So this is our portfolio and the amount we're spending on sales and marketing as a percent of revenue. It's quite different from the typical small business that we look at acquiring. Most of the companies we're looking at in this Main Street size are boasting that they have such a great brand and reputation that they haven't spent $1 on sales and marketing, which is great. But what that means is the business does not know how to effectively grow in a sustainable and repeatable way. That's our opportunity. If you don't have the funds, or if the company hasn't historically been investing in growth marketing, Our attempt is to get all of our all of our businesses into what we call the virtuous cycle of SMB. Really, it begins with providing great product and service so that you can charge a price premium, so that you can have strong margins in order to reinvest in growth and hire great people who can deliver a high quality product and service and charge a price premium, and so on and so forth. So our goal is to go find ways to improve the product and service so that we can elevate our price point and use that margin to reinvest in growth and reinvest in hiring great people. The goal of your customer acquisition process is to build a vending machine where you can put $1 in and get 10 bucks out repeatedly over and over again. You've got to utilize technology in order to track that investment you're making into growth. We use a variety of technology products across our portfolio, and we want to make sure that we are tracking from lead all the way to close one what that conversion process is, so that we can be as metrics driven as we need to be to see where our fall off is and find ways to drive that growth. So that's invest to grow. Principle number 6 is know your unit economics. Some of this is obvious, but there's some nuance to this that I want to try to unpack. The 5 different metrics that we look at most is CAC, customer acquisition cost, which is essentially the total cost to acquire a net new customer. What we call ASP, average sale price. Contribution margin, which is essentially the profit contributed to the business after COGS, or your cost of service, and your sales and marketing expense. The lifetime value, essentially the total profit you can reasonably expect from a customer over the lifetime of your relationship with them. And the payback period, how long does it take to recover that CAC investment? And it's important to note, initial investments in growth are not efficient. And that's true for us as we're experimenting with new channels and trying to find new ways to grow. We are not experts in all of the channels, and every new channel comes with its own set of difficulties that you have to figure out. In sales, that can look like over time, honing in and improving your sales team. As you go, you can drive that efficiency by training your sales team, helping them learn how to close efficiently, driving up your average sale price, improving your sales enablement, the collateral, materials, the technology that you're giving them to effectively sell, optimizing your sales process, and driving more growth so that you can hire more experienced salespeople. So over time, you'll find that efficiency starts to improve. And the same is true in marketing. Over time, you'll learn how to write better ads that prospects click on. You'll create better content. You'll, over time, fine-tune your website so that it's fully optimized, and so on and so forth. And so for Taylor Cooperative, what this has looked like, this has been one of our biggest competitive advantages for our custom flow the air. In year 1, we had a very inefficient customer acquisition process. So our cost to acquire a customer on average was about $400. So every new customer that came in the door, we were spending $400 to get them in the door and swipe their credit card. Our average sale price was $1,400. And so if you factor in our cost of goods and our customer acquisition cost, that was contributing about $650 to our overhead. That was our contribution margin, which meant our CAC percent to revenue was insane at 28%, not sustainable. We would try to offset that with return customers, organic over time that would blend in, and you'd get a blended customer acquisition cost that was a little more tolerable. But if you look at today, on average, we're spending about $220 to acquire a customer. So we got really good at figuring out where our customers are, how to get in front of them, what ads to serve them, how to retarget them, and get them into the shop. Our sales team is much better today than they were 8 or 9 years ago. They're selling at an average sales price of $2,100, meaning a contribution margin of those 2 tweaks more than doubled over the course of a few years, getting our CAC percent of revenue down to a more reasonable 10%. So again, it's finding that way to efficiently acquire customers and carving out that margin so you can go reinvest it back into your funnel. What that looks like on the Taylor Cooperative P&L is our percent to sales and marketing as a percent of revenue was able to drop almost in half over the past few years. Obviously, 8 years is plenty of time to figure out how to drive efficiency. It doesn't come overnight, but it's a process that slowly improves as you're honing that in. And what happened as we did that, we were improving the top of funnel, finding ways to get customers considering us, improving our sales process and funnel all the way across the board. So last thing I'll say on Taylor Cooperative is a sales process can become a moat, and it has been for us. And what I mean by that is our average sales price is about $2,200, like I said. As I've looked at tuck-in opportunities and competitors over the years, that's quite higher than most of our competitors. And so what that means is we have a much larger budget that we can invest into acquiring customers. And so we're outbidding our competitors. We're kind of strong-arming them in the market because we can afford to spend more than they can because of our average sale price and our contribution margin. And that can, over time, become a really effective moat in the marketplace. So that's principle 6, know your unit economics. And principle 7 is use those unit economics to quantify your funnel. So I'm going to use another example from Built by Design on this one. Let's say there's a scenario where we sit down in annual planning and we want to go drive net new incremental growth to the tune of $2 million. If you know your unit economics, you can unpack what those goals are in order to get there. So our cost per lead at Built by Design is about $150. From lead to delivering a bid or estimate, which is one of the major mileposts in our sales process, is 15%, so only 15% of those leads make it that far in our process. And once they do, 25% of them close and select Built by Design as their builder. So overall, that's pretty low, 3.75 close rate. Average sale price for that business is about $250,000. So if you put that in the context of your funnel, if the goal is to go drive $2 million in net new revenue, divided by your average sales price, that means we need to go close on average about 8 deals. In order to close 8 deals, we need to go do 32 estimates throughout the year. And in order to have the opportunity to put together 32 estimates, we're going to need to drive 213 leads. And at our average CPL of $150, we believe that a budget of about $30,000 should be able to do that. Usually what we do is that math, and we finger in the wind and go double it. And we assume that we're going to find inefficiencies along the way. But what that means is we have a concrete plan for how we can actually go drive that incremental growth. This is a screenshot of one of our operating companies' marketing closeouts. We almost take our marketing closeout about as seriously as our financial closeout. Essentially, every month, our marketing team puts together performance across leads generated, cost per lead by channel, how many leads it was, what our average sales price was that month, so that we can constantly be retooling and fine-tuning in order to maintain the metrics that we need to drive the kind of growth we're trying to drive. So that's principle number 7. Use those unit economics to quantify your funnel. Let's see, principle 8, diversify your customer acquisition funnels. A lot of folks talk about customer concentration. Another thing to think about is channel concentration. If you only have one way to go find customers and that way stops working at some point, you have just as much revenue risk as you might with customer concentration. So again, depending on the business and industry, that might look like different platforms for digital marketing, a variety of different sales strategies, but we work really hard to add incremental channels to ensure that we have channel diversity. The way we think about it is every channel we go figure out becomes a brick that we're laying on top of one another that enables more and more growth. So, for example, in our fine art studio business, Workshop SLC, TikTok was able, we found a way to make TikTok work really well. But as we experimented with another channel, like say LinkedIn, not something that's going to work for that platform. So every new channel you can find optimized in a way that your unit economics makes sense is a new brick that you add to your growth capabilities. That's important because channels are going to have natural caps. It essentially follows the law of diminishing returns. You're going to find, especially if you're in a business that has a limited marketplace, like most of our businesses, that you can only spend so much on a given platform before every incremental dollar starts to dilute in how efficient it is. So to put that in context with Northern Electric, initially, in year 1, when we acquired the company, we went to what we knew, and we found that we were able to effectively spend about $7,000 a month at about a $50 CPL in Google AdWords before our CPL started to skyrocket. We were just wasting money and spending too much compared to what we could afford against the lifetime value of our customers. Facebook, we reached a cap at about $2,000. And so that forced us to go figure out other channels, and that brought us into Google LSA, a completely different platform than Google AdWords, and also a very different set, very different playbook, different review sets, and we spent months trying to figure out how to become competitive on Google LSA. And then moved to Angie and Nextdoor. So it's a constant battle. At any given point in time, we're testing different things, trying to figure out if it's a new channel we can add as a brick to our growth plan. So again, you're trying to figure out how many channels you can stack and ensure that you're optimized at that point of maximum yield. Principle 9 is major growth unlock can be new lines of business. So if you feel like you've adequately optimized your core line of business, I'll tell you a story about what we did at Workshop SLC. When we acquired the art studio, it kind of had 2 lines of business. We would fly in living masters, really expensive and well-regarded painters and drawers and sculptors out to Salt Lake City for very high-ticket price multi-day workshops. And that was the primary revenue-generating line of business for Workshop SLC. They did a little bit of class programming, and what we saw as the opportunity of buying that company was to go invest aggressively in ongoing class programming and launch additional lines of business as we went. So as we got to phase two, we massively outgrew high-end workshops with our ongoing art classes line of business. So we continued to slowly grow the high-end workshops, but started to invest a lot more aggressively in ongoing art classes. Then we launched a ceramics program. In the first 6 months, it's doing 40% of our revenue. And today, if you look at our company, we have 4 primary ways that we make money. Those high-end destination workshops, ongoing art classes across acrylics and oils, things SIG and paint across beginners, intermediate, and advanced, a ceramics program, and studio membership. An interesting point, by the way, maybe for another time, is that's the percent of revenue makeup. You'd be shocked at the earnings makeup. Studio membership actually drives about 40 to 50% of our earnings, despite being 20% of our revenue. So that's another consideration, is unlock growth by considering new lines of business. Where I'll end the presentation is the 10th principle is you're optimizing for sustainable and repeatable. Sustainable is profitable. So can you profitably acquire this customer? Does it make sense for you to go spend time, capital to go acquire that customer? Can you make that make sense? Repeatable is it's formulaic. You can do it in September, you can do it in December, you can do it in Salt Lake City, you can do it in Denver. You want to find a way that you can repeatedly run that motion over and over again. Sustainable and repeatable, if you can achieve that, that puts you in control of your business, increases your revenue predictability, provides a competitive advantage, and reduces your revenue risk. I'll end by saying there is no silver bullet to growth. As you can see, it really just takes an ongoing process of iteration and a metrics-driven approach across your entire funnel. And I'll end by saying, we've made a lot of mistakes as we've operated, and revenue has been the thing that solved all of our problems. We've found that every time we can go and solve a new channel, unlock the next brick of growth, it's been a really good way for us to be able to reinvest and keep our companies moving forward. So I'll open it up for Q&A. I will say I'll be publishing the presentation on Local Legends. It's the newsletter I run. It's a focused exploration into the craft of building enduring small businesses. So you can subscribe there if you're not already subscribed. But yeah, thank you for letting me prime the discussion.
Thanks.